That was. Happy anniversary soon.
Read the email out. If there's a-
Could somebody just close that door? If Rick comes in late, he'll open it. So yeah, let's call the meeting to order.
Should I check if anyone's downstairs, Susan?
Might be good, I guess.
Yeah.
I put it on the agenda and I think I put it in my email, but I know we are creatures of habit. So, yeah, so we're just checking the Don Russell meeting room to make sure that no one is down there waiting for our meeting to start.
Another meeting.
Are they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so something
yeah.
about the.
I couldn't
Is it
tell.
196?
It looks very official.
Yeah, it's like a building something kind of thing.
Interesting.
Could it be
I'm
the
sure
beginning
Sky
of
knows
September?
what it is, but so she's
Could be
gonna
the
just check.
Community center.
I don't. yeah,
It's a
who
public
knows?
meeting on the Route 196 widening and overlay project.
Oh, right,
MDOT.
right, MDOT. So the state is in the house. Okay, so let's start with our usual welcome and agenda review. We're gonna take a few minutes for the welcome part today. And let's see if there's anyone joining us on Zoom. Apparently not yet. Okay. So does anybody have any agenda items to add or shift around? I'm assuming not. And why don't we just take a couple of minutes to welcome Lori Hobson, our latest member, who, you know, actually just made a decision all on her own that we might be an interesting committee for her to join, and here she is, and we're delighted to have her help.
Why is everybody else here under duress?
Well, sometimes people do get corralled,
Sure.
let's say. And sometimes they stay and sometimes they go.
Yeah. Hops and HOPSON.
And I've put Lori's information in our, we have a Google Drive and I'll
Okay.
show Lori around that, but it's
Oh, and I
in
can
the
invite her
document
to
with
it.
our the committee's information, emails, phone numbers, all that sort of thing. So why don't we just take a moment to go around the table. I'll start. So Susan Ray Reeves, I was on the comp plan update committee.
Okay.
I didn't join that from the beginning, but I was there partway along and found the process fascinating. I was really happy with the comp plan that was approved at the 2019 town meeting. And so I wanted to be part of the process. I live on Twin Pond Road off the Foreside Road. And, you know, every part of town has its characteristics and, yeah, I mean, where I live, the big idea that most impacted me, was, access to nature and open spaces and being deliberate about growth. But there are 7 others and they're all important. So, I've been chairing this wonderful group since the beginning, which I think we were formed in kind of the end of 2020 or early part of 2020. And then we really got rolling at the end of 2020. So we'll get to know each other more as we go.
Joe Feely. I was on the update committee pretty much from the beginning.
Okay.
I'd say within a couple of months. And I'm an architect by profession, and I thought it would be interesting, which it was. And I thought it would be, I thought I knew about these things, having been in front of planning boards, you know, during my career on multiple occasions, and realized I really, it didn't translate into this process. But it was fascinating. We got a lot of, how long have you lived in Topsham?
Like 27 years.
Okay, well, you double the time I've been here. So you know that a lot of people participated, and that was very reassuring. And at the end of that process, when the comp plan was passed, I was ready to go on and do something else, but, but, but Susan, who thinks this is fun, I wanted to support the process. I wanted to make sure it got implemented to the best of our abilities and for the, the best interest of the town. So I stayed on, and I'm the person dropping off. I have very mixed feelings about it, but I'm in my 8th year now, and when the plan is to go before the town to be accepted, keeps getting moved back, and yeah, no, enough said. So, but it has been a very interesting process. We've done a lot of work. I think most people have no idea how much time we've spent in public engagement on this, and listening to stakeholders, trying to find the line between what's good for developers and what's good for the town according to what the comp plan says. And I think the aspect of the comp plan very specifically that it interested me was the concept that you focus growth in an area to increase density and mixed use and increase the tax base where the infrastructure exists to do that, and not sprawl, basically, which winds up costing the town a lot of money. The other thing that probably is worth mentioning is the intent was to make this plan easier for people to use, because there are a lot of illustrations, visual aids, if you will, embodied in the comp plan, and to make it easier for the planning board so that they don't have to deal with issues of opinion. It becomes more clear what is needed, and then in some cases the planning department may be able to do basically work through all the things and then just get planning board approval at the end more easily. So that's not exactly a summary, but here we are.
So I'm Pete Bono, B-O-N-O,
Okay.
and I'm here because of Joe. He corralled me in.
You, in fairness, your little bio blurb said that you really enjoy public service.
That's true. That's true. I've been with CPIC now for about 3 years.
Okay.
And my wife and I moved here about 3 years ago. And from Bar Harbor. And I volunteered in Bar Harbor on the design review board for the town. So I got to know what ordinances are, and town managers and planning boards and select boards, and the whole hierarchy. The most important thing, and of course applicants, developers and other applicants, architects and other applicants would come before us, the design review board, to get permission to do what they want, build or modify or signage or whatever. And the most important thing was, as a board, the design review board's job was to ensure, well, obviously to implement the ordinances, but to make sure that the implementation of those ordinances maintain the character of the community. And that's imperative. And that's what we've been doing here, is to keep the character of the different neighborhoods and the different components of the town in mind. The architectural natures, you mentioned walkability was mentioned, the ability, the mixing of uses. But I mean, every portion, the components of the town as they're broken up, have that objective as kept in mind. The upper village, the middle village, the lower village, right here along the main street here. And you can see that as you drive through, you get, there's a certain charisma, a certain feeling, character, and that's what we're trying to do. Over at the mall, it's a different, totally different. Character of people. And one of the main components of what we're doing is something called form-based code or character-based code. And it also relates to the character of the community. The placement of building, the height of building.
Now, Pete, don't swamp her, it's her first, it's her first meeting, so.
I'm a former teacher, so I got.
You're doing a good job.
You are.
He's distilling it down.
And one of the first things I said to Lori was, it took all of us a while, so, no pressure to get
Oh,
anything
yeah.
under wraps quickly.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we're here to, we're here to help you along.
that's
Okay.
right.
So, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So why don't we just skip, we'll go
Yep.
to you last.
Okay.
and- yeah.
I'm Pam Belford. I have been in Maine and Topsham for a little over 3 years. I came here from Germany, where I had lived for quite a while. And I got to know Susan through a totally unrelated activity. And she called me up one day and said, hey, wanna do something? We talked about all of this stuff.
Sure.
And I know you're interested in these things. What do you think about the comprehensive plan? I said, well, I don't know what a comprehensive plan is. So I looked at it and read through it and thought, yeah, I agree with about 99% of this stuff. And if I can be of help in doing it, then fine. So I've been at it now for 2 years. My background is I'm a retired Air Force officer. I know nothing about town planning or any of this kind of stuff. It has been a fantastically interesting to learn about this stuff, to learn about the town itself. And to learn how things are done in Maine. I am not used to Maine politics and town meetings and voting and school board meetings and all that stuff. And I'm learning all that in addition to the specifics of this. It's been fascinating. I'm having fun. And one of the things I appreciate is that it has become clear to me through the 2 years that I have done this, the various meetings and everything, that no one is trying to cram anything down anyone's throat. It is truly a collaborative effort to try to come up with something that will make the town better and make people happy. And that's a good thing to be part of, so. Right.
Robin Brooks, lived in town 31 years, something like that. We first rented near Bisson Farm on West Wind Dragon since '98. We've been living in the Ivanhoe neighborhood, which is west of Tuna. And I had been involved in various different, civic town issues over the years, decades. And it just came to my attention and others in my neck of the woods that we didn't have a lot of representation on the west side of town, on town committees. And so this seemed like a good one to get involved with because it had to do with development and, the future of the town and how we want the town to feel and look. And, again, it's been a huge learning curve. It's been great to work with all these folks. And, I agree that this really, this project, if we can get it through, it's just gonna actually make things easier for the town processes. And give more of a vision, because really it's been scattershot what happens. And some things work and some things, I'm sure you've driven through town and thought, how did that get through plan? Right? And so, so it's a participatory process. We're working hard to move it along, and it has been slow, and that's been a little frustrating, to be honest. But because originally when I got on, it was going to be May 2024 that we would bring this to town meeting.
Okay.
So it's it's a big learning curve. I'm an artist, an art teacher, retired, MSAD 75 in 2020, and teach Tai Chi now for adult ed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's it on to.
Hey,
Rich Schultz. So I moved to Maine in 1997. Got married and bought a house here in Topsham in 99. So right over in the Woodside neighborhood, about a half mile from Town Hall, you're right in a little residential area behind you. I got involved, I participated in some of the public information sessions during the comp plan development back in.
The update process in
Yeah,
2017, 2018.
2018. And so they make you write your name when you attend those things so they can find you later. And but one of the questions that I actually asked a few times at those sessions was, okay, this is so wonderful plan and all, but how does it get, what makes it happen? You know, how do you follow through on these wonderful ideas? And they said, well, it's kind of funny you should ask. There's this thing called the Comp Plan Implementation Committee. And so I got involved with the Implementation Committee right in 2020 at the onset. So I've been with this process for the 4.5. Recode is only one of many prongs of the Implementation Committee, but it has been an all-consuming prong. Because it's a large effort, large focus. I'm a structural engineer by trade, so I work right here in town, but all over the country. But so my somewhat familiar with code language, not the planning per se, or the specifics, but just from my background, just what I do, it kind of picked up on it pretty quickly and it gravitated towards the recode effort. But that's pretty much where I stand right now, fairly involved with the recode, invested with the recode, and the implementation committee as a whole. And just trying to squeak it in between everything else going on in my life right now.
So you don't really know Sky,
Nope.
and Sky is the third or fourth, I think
Fourth.
fourth director of planning
Okay.
that we've worked with, but we're gonna keep her.
Oh.
So that's one of the reasons why at different points, the process slowed down. Do you want to say anything about sort of your entry into this peculiar endeavor?
Yeah, so I've been with the town for about 2.5 years now. This was my first job out of grad school. I was hired as the town planner, and I did that for a year before my then boss moved on. And I said, you know what, Recode looked so fun. I want that job. And ended up taking over the director position. I've been doing Recode for about 1.5 years with them now. And have, things have gone slowly, but I think, there's some things we've discovered, like a full-on attorney review happened and a more full-on review by the code officer happened as well. And just lots of little things. There's so many little things when this happens that you have to be aware of, and I will say, everyone here is talking about, the form-based code. And I had said to you, you should look at Articles 2 and 8, because that is what CPIC is doing. But we are also actually rewriting the entire zoning code. And I am doing not myself, we have consultants, but my scope is a little bit bigger than everyone else's.
Sure.
So it is a little bit larger than just that. And I think we're making really good progress, honestly. And the thing you guys have in front of you is some thoughts and suggestions I have as a result of the last planning board meeting, just so everyone's aware of it. And yeah, I think that's me.
Yeah, great, great. And why don't you just say a little bit
Yes.
about yourself and what brought
Why?
you to this? Yes, at this point in time.
But I lived in Topsham for about 27 and 28 years. I work in Brunswick, owned a business in Brunswick, and I was involved in maybe about 10, 11 years ago in Brunswick's CPAC, but they called it MPAC or something.
Okay,
I don't think it still is, I don't think they have it any longer. I was only there about a year because I took somebody's spot and
Mm.
then I didn't realize I had to like reapply and I'm just like, I don't have time for this. So, and but on the time I was on there, I realized, I understand things don't happen quickly and that was a little frustrating, but I understand it. So I'm well aware of how this will work.
yeah.
And then, but over the years, I've always wanted to be involved in the town and understand what's going on and instead of just like, well, why is that? And so over the years, I've looked at the website and when the times are, and like, nothing works for me. And I just happened to get an email and I'm like, well, let me look again. And this just kind of, I'm like, oh, that might work for me. And I think that's kind of where I might want to be. Just I think Topsham's going in a good direction. My personal feeling is, we don't need to keep up with the Joneses in a way. I remember watching a town hall meeting a couple years ago and I don't know, it was a developer, I don't know where he was from, but he just said, we need to keep up with Brunswick, and I don't necessarily believe that philosophy. Unless you convince me otherwise of how that could be. So I just thought this, and in the interview, I'm like, is this where I should be? Maybe it's a different committee. And I did join the bike walking pedestrian one when that
In
started.
Brunswick.
No,
Oh,
here,
here, oh.
the one that started a couple years ago.
Uh-huh.
And was on there for several months, and it became well aware to me that half the people on that committee were there for their own agenda, and I found it very frustrating,
Mm.
so I asked to get off,
Mhm.
because that's
Mm.
not why I was there.
Yeah,
I think you should work as a team for the whole community, it's not just your neighborhood.
what a
So-
beautiful way to wrap up. That,
So,
that is what we all need to do. We all have, our own
agendas.
agendas and, points of view. But we have to put the interests of the town
Right.
first, so,
Right.
yeah, glad to have you with us. And online with us and
Oh.
zooming in is Chuck Farrell, who's put his application in, but he has not been interviewed yet, so we'll do this another time with Chuck. So, all right. So there's our welcome and agenda. We have otherwise no public comment session, but what we've done from the beginning is if people come to a meeting, and some folks did early on, but have not recently, and, listen to what's going on. And if people have questions during the meeting, we allow that to happen. 'Cause we're pretty informal. All right, so getting formal, let's look at the minutes of the October 14th meeting were distributed ahead of time. I hope folks had a chance to look at them. Any errors for correction or changes to make? Can I just assume with a little something wave that people approve of them? Yeah, so unanimously, yeah, thank you. We are not having a workshop this month. We've canceled the workshop in the past. We started, just for Lori's information, we started having a workshop on the third Tuesday of the month as a way to have more informal conversation as part of our learning process to grapple with some things. And it served us well. And at this point, I'm thinking that we probably are not going to be needing that, but you never know. So we take it month by month. And this month, we also don't have a planning board workshop, but we will have one early in December on the 11th. So all of us are encouraged to attend if we can. This will be is it the 3rd or the 4th? I think it's the 4th.
I think it's with
Or
me
it's the
this
3rd.
time it's the 3rd. Yeah.
Right, because last 2 weeks ago, it wasn't really a workshop on the code. It was more of looking at, it was.
Well, we
but
only
it-
had one before that.
Did we only have one
Yeah, we
before
had
that?
one in July.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I was counting last time. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do it
So it was
formally.
looking at the code, but it was also looking at 2 different addresses and projects by a developer in town. So, yeah, so no workshop, but please come on December 11th. And I don't even know when our December meeting is. I think it's the 8th. I think the December
Yeah, probably.
1st is a Monday, so it's December 8th.
I'm sorry, what's December?
Our December meeting,
Oh, ours.
your last. Correct.
Hmm.
Yes, it's the 8th because the 1st is a Monday.
Yeah. So the next bullet is really about the membership news that Joe has reached the end point, submitted his resignation through the end of the year. It's great to know that we have, you know, another month to work on this with him, and it's wonderful to have Lori already on board and Chuck willing to join us. Hopefully that select board interview will happen, and Chuck will be with us for the next meeting. And I don't think we have any other membership news at the moment. Okay. So on to Recode. Our first bullet is the key stakeholder feedback, and at this past planning board workshop, we got some very clear feedback on a project across the street that is, the way the code is right now, is not going to be it will not work for that developer. And it has to do with density, and it has to do with the building types that are allowed in the Upper Village.
So you're saying, just to clarify,
Yeah.
that the way that the developer's plans won't work with the new code or with
The new
the
code.
existing code?
The new.
New code.
Thanks.
So, one of the interesting things about that workshop was, you know, Leslie Oberholzer, our consultant, attended. She was on Zoom, and we had already reviewed with her 3 different sketches that she did for that site. And although, I mean, the long and short of it is, even with those sketches, the density that they need, that the developer needs to make that project successful, is unlikely to be available with the current building types. And so we have before us the possibility of allowing the general building in the Upper Village. That's a possibility. That's been a request by them.
What is the general building as compared to Sky District?
We can pull that up. I
Yeah, I'll
think,
pull it up.
on the-
Hmm.
Yep.
But we can't do spot zoning, so
It would be for the Upper Village,
for the Upper Village.
Yeah.
In its entirety.
which is, and where that boundary is for the Upper Village and Middle Village. That's
Just
another-
south of Brilliance and, oh, I wasn't proposing any changes
No,
to
no,
that, but
right,
you
right, right.
you could if you wanted to.
No, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, enough changes.
I don't have my sights set on that one. This is the general building.
Yeah.
It's,
It, you know, they've looked at it, and they said this would allow us to have the density that we need to make that work.
And currently, the general building is allowed in which zones?
currently the general building is allowed in, I don't believe any of the village zones. It is allowed in Topsham Fair Mall. Sorry, I found it. It is allowed in the Topsham Fair Mall or commercial mixed use. It is allowed in the mixed transitional, the mixed residential, and the master plan district, so it is not allowed in the villages.
The 3 village zones. So when you think about, you know, we look at the abutting zones and the upper edge of the middle village is on both sides of the street are car dealerships, a used car dealership and the Volvo dealership. And then as you keep going along Main Street, we have two other car dealerships in the upper village. And one of the projects that the voters just, approved a TIF, the project itself hasn't been approved, but in the mixed transitional zone, one of the two mixed transitional zones on Union Park Road, that will be, I'm guessing that will be a general building.
Yeah, do you
Um,
want me to speak to this for a second?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So currently, we are in what is called the Village Center. The recode proposes to change that to the Upper Village and does propose to change the boundaries just a little bit. In light of the proposed development on 4 Union, the Dave Holman project, the voters approved density changes to the Village Center 2 years ago that allow something equivalent to this to be built because we do not currently regulate buildings. Currently, you could build this across the street, effectively. Your density might be, it's decently high in the zone. And the recode dealt with that issue of the project proposed on 4 Union by putting a little bit of the mixed transitional over there and saying, oh, this fits better over here. It is kind of transition between the proposed master plan or Crooker district and the Upper Village. And with that, the proposed project of 4 Union will remain permissible under the recode, but anything else in the Upper Village would not, which is what I bring up in my first point just about the fairness and equity of the changes, is that I do think we really need to consider how we're putting those changes forward. And the town did already vote to allow this density up here 2 years ago.
So any thoughts about that?
Well, so when you use the word spotty, it does sound like spot zoning, like that we're just accommodating certain developers and not really implementing vision, which is typically scope.
Well,
So how do we do that? How do we get it fixed? When you guide us, how do we make it fixed?
I will just say this, spot zoning is perfectly legal in Maine. Topsham does not do it. They have not chosen to, but I do just want to put that out there. Contract zoning is what it's usually referred to, and that is a completely legal practice and something that could potentially be beneficial here at some point, but isn't something that's on the table right now. I think that by allowing the general building in the Upper Village, you bring it up to what it is now. And I understand why this happened the way it did, because when recode, it's taken a long time. We know that things have changed. The housing crisis got so much worse while this process has been ongoing. And, density changes were made because it was, okay, great, this is a really good project. We like the sound of it. We want to do things to help housing be built. And I think that then just how that went over to recode, it didn't match up as much. I agree. I think Susan and I agreed that allowing the general building in the Upper Village was a way to keep the existing density to allow equity between what's allowed now and what could be in the future. And also, I don't want to say throw someone a bone or something, but to hear feedback and respond to it and propose a change that does address those concerns. So.
Did you put the map back up?
Yep.
Right, but I also, these questions. Can we recollect why we would have not included the general building in the Upper Village in the first place?
My understanding is that there was a focus on village-sized scale in this area, and what was being proposed would have been much greater density than what was allowed. It was what you were proposing would have been a boon. It would have been, you're getting so much more. This is a step along that, we're going towards no density limits and recode, you were offering something better. They preemptively changed the density to match what our current code is and therefore overshot what you were suggesting. I think that's what happened. And my guess is potentially the old Main Street plan, but that's before my tenure and I don't feel super comfortable suggesting that.
I think part of it had to do with height and the other buildings
The height,
around it.
scale.
You know, the scale, sort of trying to match that but knowing that that is something that is changing and the one thing that as a general rule, what the comp plan calls for is allowing for development in greater density in all of these center zones to the extent that it makes sense in that zone. You know, so the lower village, you know, has certain building types, the middle village building types. And the upper village, you know, what we're suggesting, and I think it's a good idea. You know, it's the balance between looking at one project and saying, this might look like contract zoning. And looking at the needs of the town, we need more housing. This is a project that offers housing. And it's in a location that will promote the walkability, you know, in the town center. So if by allowing one building type here, it would be obviously throughout that zone. And does that make sense? I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, there are different lenses through which to view this. I think one is, wouldn't it be wonderful to see a village scale like upper, like middle and lower, not exactly the same scale, but something that felt town-like. But the other lens is through the character base idea, and the character of Upper Village is somewhere between Lower Village and the mall in a way.
There you go.
And viewed that way, and given what's here now that's not going away, it really to gain more housing, to encourage more housing, and it seems like we're giving up very little with the remote potential that if we kept it the way it's currently written in the proposed code, that we might someday wind up with, I don't know, a downtown like Brunswick or something like that, but we may achieve that more easily with a general building. So it's a long way of saying, yeah, I go along with it.
Yeah, I don't see a downside.
I think
know.
that Joe's point that the general building would be the way to get that because it gives them the density to get the residential in to build up, to create those dense streets. I think this Upper Village becomes something that's more like Brunswick or Bath or Portland in that regard, potentially. And I will just reiterate, matches what is already allowed.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
You're not proposing changes, you're aligning with what.
Yeah, I mean,
It
we've
is right
been
now, yeah.
promoting density from the very beginning,
right.
and so it would see, in a way, it seems we're kind of stuck appearing as though we're now against it in one part of town.
Right, and I think until you sort of step back and ask the question, why is it we didn't allow the general building in this area? It's like, well, that doesn't make sense that we didn't allow it. This was not something this was something that the consultants put together for us to consider, you know, and here we are at this point, considering it in a way that, because a project, you know, is saying, please consider it. So we are, you know. If anybody,
The other
Yeah.
side of the question is, yes, what other building types are allowed in the zone? What is preventing them from having that level of density?
So currently, the buildings allowed in this zone exactly mirror what's allowed in the lower village. Which is the village building, the traditional storefront, and the row building. My understanding based on that planning board was the height restrictions on the row and the village buildings are hard on them. A row building has exterior doors, so you can't do a internally accessed apartment building with that one. Traditional storefront, you can do pretty large and have apartments above it, but in the case of across the street, if you want to do something behind that's just a residential building, or you want to just do a residential building, which once again, with the housing crisis that we have going on, I don't know if we should restrict. You then kind of have these really stringent glass facade requirements for the lower part. And then the village building, I think is similarly, you can do like an internal apartment building with that one, but it's not really meant to be, it's not meant to be a 4-story apartment building, which you can currently do in this.
So there is a little table, in the revised code, in the proposed code, and I circled Upper Village General Building because it was not, I don't know if it was conditional, but it was not allowed there. And I circled it. We have actually discussed this once before. And I think we backed away from making the change, not seeing the need for it, but I think we do now. Does anybody have a problem with our allowing? Oh, okay. What about you, Mr. Bono?
No, I was, just trying to find
That table?
that table.
It's on 2-9.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah.
Have that. Like. Is that where we put this map?
It's on the same page, but I've got an extra physical one for you.
So thank you.
And it's not the current one behind it. It was a handout for the planning board, so you can kind of compare it.
Right.
So where's that? This is, we're here. Okay, this is the police department, yes.
So we added
Across
in
the
the
street,
street
down the
village.
road.
Yeah.
Is what we were talking about the last time.
So, yeah, and which one it would be allowed, and so it would be pretty much everything except for.
Middle and lower.
And lower.
It's not allowed
It's
in lower.
not allowed in the lower or the middle.
So one thing,
And
Susan,
so the next question, then the next question for me is, why should we not also allow it in the lower?
Yeah.
Sure.
So this.
Character.
Oh.
I mean, when it's,
Is it-
at some point, several of those buildings may go away.
Oh, yeah.
But right now, we have the buildings that exist.
So the Wright Pierce building, then that's considered a row building?
the Wright Pierce building might be considered a general building,
Right,
quite
so
honestly.
That's where.
But I would want to double check that with Tom, because the other thing it could be considered is potentially a traditional storefront. That would be the closest aspect, and I would say if you're questioning why not to do it, and
Well, I'm questioning, yeah, because of.
I do have some thoughts if you'd like to hear
Yeah,
them on it.
Yeah,
I do think that the character thing, it does fit there, and you guys have done a lot of stuff with character. It just is a little bit lower down there, in my opinion. It's a little bit smaller scale. You have some more just of those historic, kind of, I'm forgetting shapes. Just kind of, the village building. And I have to say also, I do think it's important, we're listening to our stakeholders. No one's brought that up as a concern. We're not hearing that from anyone, that they're feeling like their development potential is limited. I think there's only,
Well, only the one person in the lower village.
sorry, actually,
Run Ben.
he is on a different point that I bring up, and he's not in the lower village, which is the point that I
He's in
bring
the
up.
middle of it. He's the
Yep.
start.
He was,
He's the start. of
Yeah,
that.
so I guess he
Elm
would
Street.
that.
yeah, this is where I'm.
Yeah,
this is
That
where-
is fair. I am not completely prepared to discuss that one tonight. If you guys want to think about that, we could maybe have it be shorter down there. I do think the height thing is more what I'm thinking, but I would say let's do it. If you guys want to, I worry we'll take up this entire meeting if we get into that.
Yeah,
Though.
the only reason the only thing I was going for was, wait a minute, why stop at upper, why not revisit lower?
Yep.
And other areas as well, I thought we had.
Yep.
Kind of incorporated it in the upper with the. By not having, carte blanche with the general building type. But with the other ones, we did have provisions for the optional height extension, the additional story
yeah.
height with
Incentivizing.
incentivizing.
Yeah.
Which would give essentially the general building capacity in the row or the other building type.
Yeah.
Character. So. If, like I said, you know, that with those balances, I'm saying, all right, well, if we're saying that, yeah, the B density is. That much easier to get with the general building and we're okay with it, then, you know, maybe it should be opened up in other areas as well.
So question about. Would the consultants be in favor if we wanted to go ahead and include the general building in the upper village? Would that blow their mind, or would that be?
I will say that
Wait.
this is our town, you know, and this is our choice to make.
Yeah, sure.
And I do think one thing that I've noticed a little bit that I think is important is Leslie and Kirk are based out of Illinois. And there are different patterns of development out there. There's more interest in development, there's higher populations. We do somewhat struggle in Maine to get development due to historic patterns of, you know, that's a whole longer conversation I'm happy to have with you another time, honestly. I can go on and on. I think that there is a fear of certain things that come from them and their experiences out there that just are not necessarily true in Maine, especially this part of Maine. And I also don't think that they would go crazy. I just give that information to explain why they perhaps didn't come in and say, oh, you should absolutely do this. And I think that, you know, that's my opinion on that. I think that they would absolutely trust Topsham to make their own decisions on this. I do think there is a different pattern of development in suburban Illinois than there is in this part of Maine. And
We could ask them for their, the pros, from a professional perspective, their pros and cons to the move, but, you know, you're right, I mean, it's not their role.
Well, the planning board, from my attendance and yours also, they don't like spot zoning. Spot zoning is bad.
Yep.
Because it's been discussed.
Yep.
Several times before, they don't like the spot zone, they don't like to make those exceptions.
And I will say that when Susan and I have gone to a couple talks about how to do a recode over the past couple of years, and at a couple of them, I feel like I've seen that one of the things they say is, you know, if you're getting ready to do a recode, consider if you have a zone where there's a lot of contract zoning going on, or maybe you've done contract zoning like 3 or 4 times for the same thing, maybe that thing should be allowed, you know? And so to me, that's just something to consider, you know, about this. I think that that's a helpful thing to think about.
So I'm gonna suggest that rather than go in the direction of should the general building be allowed elsewhere, let's bracket that. Because what we're looking at here is the stakeholder feedback that we got, and it was pretty specific in the planning board meeting from the developer and the engineer that he's hired. They want the density, and all of us seem to be in agreement that general building throughout the upper village is a good idea. I think getting feedback from the consultants is always a good idea, because sometimes there's an unforeseen something or other hiding. But I think in this case we'll be fine. What I'd like to do is go on to another piece of the feedback that we got there in the other mixed transitional zone. In that zone, the other bright blue thing up there, it's along Park Drive. There's a project underway. It's under construction. There are 4 20-unit buildings going up. It's not mixed use.
Next to the. It's
But-
right next to Goodwill. I
Right
went
next to
there
Goodwill. Yeah, yeah. And the thing that's troublesome there is, to the developer, is that, you know, the site that Goodwill is on is owned by the developer. And there's anticipation that Goodwill will want to expand at some point. I don't know if that's really in the cards at the moment, but if it is, they don't want that to be non-conforming. At the moment, if this code is approved, Goodwill will be non-conforming. And while you can't perhaps eliminate all non-conformities I think we're all in agreement that it's good where we can to not have non-conformist. So that we had some discussion, and the thing that's not allowed along Park Drive in that mixed transitional zone is retail. And Sky put a question to me, which I was very appreciative of. It's like, why are you against retail, Susan? Because to me, I couple retail in my mind with the suburban storefront. It's not connected necessarily, but if you look throughout the Topsham Fair Mall, that's what's there. That's what's in a lot of other areas along the strip going into various towns, including Brunswick. And, but that's and the suburban storefront is not allowed on Park Drive. But when you think about why not allow retail, Sky has mentioned a couple of different times that there have been no new projects proposed for retail in the past 3 years.
At least not while I've been here. I did some
Yeah.
amendments for Market Basket, but they had already been approved before I started working here in the spring of 23.
Yeah.
They were the last ones that I'm aware of.
And I think everybody knows that retail as a thing is kind of going through a lot of changes. It did during the pandemic in a big way, but because of the degree to which people order things online, there's a lot of change going on there. So to allow retail in the mixed transitional zone, it's all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, it's not really the problem that I have been holding it as.
So in other words, we could amend our proposal
Yeah.
to include retail,
Yeah.
but with form-based code, if suburban storefronts would be allowed.
That's right,
So
that's
that
right.
retail would have to look different
Mhm.
if we say it.
that's right.
So it's good, okay. So
And I would say that falls under my second bullet point, which is focus on uses, not building types. And I
Mhm.
think that your strength here with the form-based code is that you are asking buildings to look a certain way. As you were saying, the character and the, appearances of Topsham matters to you. And I will say that's not necessarily a new thing. We do have architectural standards in Topsham already. And I think that it is a very logical compromise to say we don't want it to look exactly the same, but we don't want to make, because I will say it is worse to be a non-conforming use than to be in a non-conforming building. You can't expand the use at all.
Aha,
And that is another
that's
aspect.
an important thing to
Yeah.
know.
Like, not that we would want to we'd want to mitigate the non-conforming buildings as well, but the non-conforming use, I was talking to Tom about this, he's like, it's not even if they expand like physically. What if it was a restaurant and they redid their seating and they had 25 tables before, and now they're proposing 27 because they, moved some 4 tops to some 2 tops? That would be an expansion of the use, and they couldn't do that. And so I think we should try to minimize non-conforming uses where possible, because that is just harder for an existing institution. A non-conforming building, you could amend it, we can even probably, it's just, it is harder in general for us to deal with too. And I think that if you are, concerned with the character and the form of something, let's allow the use. I don't think any of the uses on Park Drive would be in a suburban storefront style. They're different buildings out there, you kind of have to choose to turn onto Park Drive. I think it makes sense as you allow light manufacturing out there, where a workshop building is allowed, but if, say you're doing light manufacturing there, but you're also selling a lot, what if Tom found that that was actually retail and not light manufacturing? But, because sometimes the way that building is being used, it does
Both.
influence that, but then you're in a workshop building, the retail is allowed, it's no issue, or you're in a small general building, the retail is allowed, or a village building, I think is allowed there too. So those were my thoughts on that.
It's always felt a little to me, like, even though the character of Park Drive is completely different from Topsham Fair Mall Drive. One of the things that I liked about what we're trying to do is to offer more, not
Mhm.
take away things. And I was always a little uncomfortable with that aspect of Park Drive, I think I viewed retail the same way you did, Susan. And the fact that the two aren't linked, don't need to be linked is
Yeah.
really an eye opener.
I was
After-
creating this
after-
false
after
connection.
7 or 8
Right.
years.
Yeah, yeah. Any thought?
The only thought, the other one is, one of the ways this mixed transition first came up was the idea of the retail was having the retail coupled with the residential.
Mhm.
So it wasn't just, so it was.
Oh, by standalone.
Right, so that's what we're looking at, saying, just a standalone 100% retail was what triggered saying, all right, what can we do here? Saying, okay, if it was something like a Sherwood-Williams building, then the code should encourage residential units on the upper floors,
Mhm.
not just the straight
Right, right.
straight retail. If it was, a transition between the Topsham Fair Mall, and, the residential neighborhoods, it was that transition. So having the mixed use building
Yeah.
was the key that we're pushing
Right,
towards there,
right.
not the exclusion of pure retail.
Right, and the first conversations we ended up having that led us to say, let's create a mixed transitional zone was, and not allow retail. The reason for that I got stuck with, and the reason for that was we want new retail to be concentrated in the Topsham Fair Mall.
Right.
And, oftentimes I'm thinking big box store, I'm thinking major, like Sherwin-Williams. But, we've also talked about the small corner shops that might be on the first floor residential above, or a coffee shop or something like that. And so allowing retail in the mixed transitional zone is another area where it makes sense, I think, for us to flex. And I think Sky's second bullet kind of describes that well.
Yeah, I think that was caveated, primary use versus.
And I get that, and I really do, and I think I would bring it up again that sometimes, code about uses can be a little squirrely, so it's just easier for us if they're both permitted, because, it's, and also, if we're not allowing the suburban storefront, then the only building that can be 1 story is, I think, really the workshop building or the row building might be able to be 1 story. I'm not actually completely sure about that one. If you do a traditional storefront, fairly certain that has to be 2 stories, and a general building has to be 2 stories, then you're probably gonna have retail on top. And if you don't have retail, maybe it's some office space, and that's probably because people are hearing that someone needs office space, I don't think that's usually an issue, but I've heard from a couple small businesses that they've looked for some office
Yeah.
space and struggled. And I think this is in one instance where we can probably allow the market to determine that, quite honestly. And right now the market is very much housing. And the other thing I will just bring up really quickly about mixed use is in Maine, and you probably know this, Rick, is certain uses will generate more trips, vehicle trips.
Yeah.
And if you trigger a certain amount during peak hours, you have to get a DOT traffic movement permit.
Right.
And that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you have to do off-site improvements if you have to get that market basket. That's the reason the exit on 295 got changed, and why there are speed humps on Winter Street. Apparently Winter Street wanted those. I'm just gonna caveat that the town did not ask for that necessarily. And well, actually, I'm not sure if the roundabout, that might have just been Market Basket. I hear Market Basket really likes roundabouts. And I know that when the 4 Union Park project first came through, he's like, oh, I'd love to maybe do a coffee shop. He got rid of that because he would have triggered a traffic movement permit, and that was not gonna work for him financially.
Right.
I think mixed use is great, and where we see it, that would be good, but I also think that there are other things that are limiting it that we cannot do anything about. And if a small coffee shop wants to go in on Park Drive, they think they can make it work or something. And the building types are, hey, put another story above and okay, we can throw in a couple apartments,
Yeah.
because we're a coffee shop and that's what we were gonna do or something. They're expecting to deal with that trip issue in a way that a residential building
No.
was not. So that's just something else I think is important to know and think about.
So where does one read in the code about that trip issue, the vehicle trips?
That's a
that triggers
DOT, that's a DOT thing. It might be
Yeah.
listed in our code, but that's
Right.
that's also just DOT requires that.
Obviously, any developer is gonna have that.
And if they don't, we know about it and we do
Yeah,
tell them because you do have to get your other permits.
Yeah.
Um,
So the idea of allowing retail in the mixed transition zone, how do people feel?
Given what we've just recently discussed,
Yeah.
I feel
Good.
could have been.
Any concerns?
And tying, not a concern, but tying it, having the retail on the first floor, and having apartment living above that, I mean, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
You know,
and I think
Yeah.
you'll see that naturally with the way the buildings
walkability
are.
and social interaction and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The fact that the 4 apartment buildings are going in now. There are gonna be people living there, there's perhaps more of an attraction to putting in some kind of
Retail, that's
Mhm.
right,
yeah.
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the other, so that would sort of take away the concern that was being held about goodwill. So if we allow
Yep.
retail in the mixed transitional zone, there's no non-conformity issue.
It wouldn't be a non-conforming use. The workshop building was being retooled already to fit them. I don't know how the lobster fits in building wise. But I think allowing it as a use would go a long way.
Cause that is actually, it's a light manufacturing, right? They're making it there and then they're
I
also.
think Tom
retailing
said
it?
that counts as retail, so that's why I said it's
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
difficult sometimes with which one is your use, your
Right.
primary use.
And as a practical viewpoint, a business, any business looking at the Topsham Fair Mall.
Yeah.
Or this zone next to it, they're gonna look at the surrounding retailers and see where they wanna belong.
Mhm.
So I mean, if I were a retailer, which I was for 30
Mhm.
years. And I'm looking at, the typical suburban storefronts and more in the mall,
Mhm.
if I think my business is gonna do well in that
Right.
Mhm.
environment,
You'll
I'm
go
gonna
there.
go there.
Yep.
But if I look right next door at, where other things are taking place and not much retail, I may not wanna be there, so there's a practicality to this.
But the thing is, Goodwill has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
So we would be doing a solid by a current business that's been present in the town for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to pose any major problems, given what retail is going through at the present moment.
Yeah.
So I think we are unified. All right. Number 2,
So I wrote, we discussed, but we agreed to amend.
yes, and agreed, yeah.
So then the only distinction between the mixed use commercial and the transitional zone would be.
There'd be, I think so. The suburban storefront would be allowed in the mixed use commercial. Oh, sorry if I wrote that wrong for you guys early. Or I feel like I might have written that wrong on this map, actually, gosh. Yeah. It wouldn't be able, so
No.
sorry, I got distracted by my deficiencies in map making. The differences between them would be you could do a suburban storefront in the orange zone, the commercial mixed use. And I am proposing, but I don't know, planning board might say no to this and I don't really care. But my thought is that light manufacturing probably shouldn't be allowed in the mixed use commercial to protect spaces for retail. and keep that as a retail area and allow it in the mixed transitional where, and also the workshop building is not currently proposed to be allowed in the mixed use commercial. So my suggestion would be to kind of just make that all fit together. You allow light manufacturing in the mixed use transitional, you do allow retail, you do not allow the suburban storefront. It all makes sense to me. I do think there would probably be some potentially other use differences, though maybe not because they are the same one right now. And I'm not really suggesting that that change a whole lot because as I said, being a non-conforming use is just pretty hard.
So looking at that
Yeah, looking at
distinction
those distinctions.
between
the
the mixed commercial and the mixed transitional, let's just run those down again because, so the suburban storefront is allowed in mixed commercial, but not mixed transitional. Light manufacturing is allowed in mixed transitional, but not.
That's my suggestion, yes.
And is that?
It's
is-
not what is currently there, but the use table, it does need work and
Because we haven't really worked on the use table.
I don't know what it is in our current one. I can try to look at that. I'm just talking about the recode right now.
I don't know, maybe I was kind of. Ahead of us, but I thought that was something we had discussed.
It's something that we looked at, but I don't think,
But it didn't make it into three.
yeah, we'll just find that.
Light manufacturing is currently.
So
Conditional in the MUC. And. Permitted a couple other places. So yeah, basically, if you allow light manufacturing in the mixed transitional to adhere to the code or the character there, you would be making it a little bit easier for them. They would no longer be conditional. They are currently conditional in their zone. And I would really what I would be doing was when we get to Article 6, the use table, I would say it doesn't make sense that this is allowed here and propose that it not be. And you guys can align with me on that if you'd like to.
in the
Commercial mixed use.
yeah.
I don't think it makes sense to allow the workshop building isn't allowed there. And there's none right now, but they might say, you know, we don't want to take uses away. And I wouldn't really fight them on that. That's just my thought looking at it, that's how we would do it, but that's not something I feel very strongly about.
So does that help you to
Yeah,
realize that there is a rational distinction?
I just wanted to make sure we talked through
Yeah.
that there's still enough distinction remaining
Right.
that we're not just saying, all right. Scrap the whole transition.
I think there's some building difference, yeah, because the workshop isn't allowed in the commercial mixed use anyway, so I feel like building wise, there actually is.
Is it distinct?
There's
Yeah,
still-
and maybe the uses stay the same and it's just that the buildings are what's different. And that may be what they want to do.
Yeah. So ready to move on from that. There's two things we've agreed upon. Yay. Now I'm turning over your bullet sheet. And so we've already agreed on the first bullet.
Yep,
We've
and the
agreed on
second one as
second
well.
bullet,
Yep.
And we're looking at, okay, one of the things that came up, and it had nothing to do with the presentation that was being made by Dan Catlin, the developer, and Chris Belanger, the engineer, related to these two sites. But the planning board is very aware of the car dealerships. There they are, and in the proposed code, they will be non-conforming.
Their
So
uses would be.
their uses will be non-conforming. So let's look at this. We haven't looked at this.
It's really similar to the retail one.
Yeah.
I'm simply suggesting that
As a
you
conditional.
you don't change it. It's currently conditional. You keep it as conditional because the conditional use is expected to have some more landscaping buffering requirements than it
Right.
currently does.
And that hasn't been sorted out.
It hasn't
It's
been sorted out, but
expected.
they
It's
seem
in-
to like it, so I feel pretty confident saying that would probably go through. Josh did a good job on, you can either do a pretty wide, like mixed deciduous kind of border for a more rural area, where if you're on a huge lot, you can keep like 40 feet of, you know, existing forest. If you're more suburban, maybe you're doing 20 feet of evergreen, and if you're in really urban, you can do a fence. And we felt like that would probably deal with a lot of issues we've seen with conditional use.
So car dealerships in middle and upper village are conditional
There's
now.
no middle village,
There's no
really.
middle.
Yeah, the middle village boundary is right below the car
Okay.
dealerships.
So they're conditional now, And we're suggesting that instead of not being allowed, that they remain conditional.
Yeah.
That seems to be a really sensible way to go, to not take things away.
How much robust landscape screening do you think?
So they would just exist as they are now. They would be a conditional use. If they came back for a big change and they needed to get an updated conditional use permit, we probably would require them to do some more landscaping. As a result of that, Josh had some pictures. Were you at the conditional use workshop, Pete?
I'm sorry.
Were you at the conditional use workshop? We did have an initial
Yes.
one where you saw the pictures. He showed some good pictures, and the evergreen one is really not that crazy. You kind of just do some multiple evergreens to kind of mostly visually block something.
Okay.
It's like between like a forest border and a fence border. And that also may alter a little bit, you know. And I am not suggesting that we change any other building allowances as a result of this use decision. The car dealerships is just a use decision.
Landscaping, beefing that up makes perfect sense.
And that's what everyone seems comfortable with when I talk to them, is asking them to do more landscaping. Maybe that's the way of doing it, you know?
Great.
And then by being conforming, it allows them to expand.
So
I
the,
will say sometimes that expansion, so Lee did just come in to get a service building put in their back parking lot because they need less space to store cars now, and they want to pivot to a little bit more of a service-based business. That could be what expansion is too. So they're not changing their footprint really at all. It's just, you know, that. This is an instance where I'm suggesting that you suggest this because I think the planning board will do this.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's your choice if you want to take a stand on this.
It will show that we're hearing them,
Mhm.
you know, and when I'm just looking at the use table, which is on page 6-4 in the code. And right now, the way it's proposed in the upper village, the only thing that is allowed, but only conditionally, is vehicle repair and maintenance personal. But vehicle sales and, you know, commercial, not allowed. Sales and rental, not allowed. Fueling station, not allowed. Body and paint shop, not allowed. Which parts of that would become conditional? All of
That's
them?
fair. I don't completely know why it's turned into that. I don't have a completely great answer for you.
I wonder if that level of breakdown
Yeah,
exists in our current
I don't,
code.
I can check on Tom with that if you'd like.
That would be great.
And basically just have it be that CPIC wants to keep it as is currently, effectively. Or no? No,
So-
sorry.
Yeah, I think it's okay, but I think it would be interesting to see how this breakdown, because one of the things when we originally started this,
Mm-hmm.
we looked at the use table as it exists, and it's massive. It's like a run on, you know, like 100 different uses. And a lot of those were consolidated. A few new ones probably were popped up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with the use table, but I took what, you know, prior directors were saying. I'd be curious to see, and Tom is always the person that we consult. Like how.
I
this
think it would be
compares.
vehicle sales and rental, quite honestly, looking at it. Vehicle maintenance and commercial, Tom and I've talked about that, and I think that's mostly sorted, though I will say this is not done. They haven't looked at it yet, and
Right.
things could, you know, kind of dramatically shift.
for
But I
us
think
to
what
make
you
it-
would be proposing that
Yeah.
vehicle sales and rental become conditional.
Of course, the sales is integrally combined with the maintenance.
Yeah, they do maintenance over
The
here.
maintenance
Yep.
follows the
And once
sales.
again, that's why I say use is really tricky
Yeah.
in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
It's all about which one is considered your primary use, but also then if we're gonna have accessory uses, not just necessarily be blanket allowed, allowing that as a use, even if it's that, okay, this is actually their primary use is repair.
This is correct.
And I
Yeah.
I think part of where, like, this, revisiting some of the history on where this, like, how
this came about. Yeah.
Part of it was,
Allowed.
that was somehow a theme that got really highlighted in the comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
The update.
And also had to do with, we said, okay. If it was a non-conforming use. When the business left, it would allow for redevelopment, for the repurposing of the site, and that discussion was really brought up around, say, the Brilliant
Mhm.
Yeah,
property
motors, yeah,
and
yeah.
saying, okay, you know, you're not just gonna come back and put in
Yeah,
a different dealership or expansion onto, say, the property next to Volvo as you go further down. I think we
That's Middle
addressed that
Village.
with the Middle Village border.
Yep.
Or like, you know, if Gibbs, you know, instead of a gas station now becomes a,
mhm,
you know, enterprise rental
mhm.
place.
Gibbs
you
is
know.
not currently allowed in this zone, just.
Well, no, I'm saying, but exactly, so if that property. was
Yeah.
to-
Yeah, no, I get what you guys are saying, and I think that, you know, this is the choice. Is this the thing that you want to make the stand on? I know that there are people on the board that don't like the idea of making things, you know, not permitted.
Non-conforming.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
are currently allowed, and I think, I will say there's the other thing, you know, is, I don't know exactly how they look tax base wise, but with how property taxes have gone up, you know,
You don't wanna
I
discourage.
think being cautious about pushing out commercial is, you know, something to think about.
Yeah,
No, I'm,
so we've got three things that, this is the third one, right? Which is allowing vehicle sales and rental, maintenance, whatever,
It's vehicle
To-
sales and rental, maintenance is already conditional.
okay, to be conditional as it currently is in the code. Seeing nods around the table, anybody object? Great,
I agree.
great,
Okay,
three things,
perfect.
But with additional landscaping.
if,
Yes.
that will only come into play if they want to expand or
I
whatever,
see.
and there's a, yeah.
Yep, and that is, yeah, it would be like us, and Josh and I are trying to figure out what that is actually also too. So much to do, so much to do.
So much to do.
John, with the additional landscaping, would there be standards? I mean, to say.
Yes.
More robust, that's like saying, I want a beautiful building.
Oh, no, there's standards, there's
Okay.
standards, there's standards. I leave it to Josh because he's a registered landscape architect.
Oh.
And I pay for that license, so now I like to use it. No, I don't pay for it. You all pay for it. Thank you. He's been very helpful. No, he's a registered landscape architect. So I do usually let him take those. And it was 40 feet of like mixed deciduous. So for like a rural lot out in R3, a conditional use, you know, that could be a good option because maybe you're gonna only clear a center part of it and it's gonna be well screened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted something that
Yeah.
people could make a judgment on.
Yep, we'll need to figure out exactly how that looks for existing buildings and stuff. I think those would still stand, and then it was 20 feet of evergreen, and he'll write these, so they're clear. And then there was also a fence for like a really urban situation, you know, if like down at the Topsham Fair Mall or something, there's an existing, like one of the small stores or something goes to a conditional use, maybe they need to fence it somehow. We still need to massage some of this, but the intention is
There are
basically that
options.
visually, yes, those were all options. I'm saying where they
Yeah.
might have fit best.
Yeah.
Is basically that when you have a conditional use, you know, probably trying to screen it from the permitted uses of the zone is seemingly the best way of handling it. And I think would have dealt with some of the concerns that, you know, we've seen with conditional use permits that have come through.
So that deals with all of the things that came at us in the last planning board workshop. There is one more thing that is on the last bullet on the other side of Sky's memo here to us, which is we have been asked by one resident to allow for a greater density in that corner lot. Right now, the way the code is, there is not any building allowed on that corner lot.
You're talking about Elm, Maine.
Elm and Maine, okay, yeah,
No building?
it's a too small a lot. We have a minimum lot size in order to put a building on a site,
On that side of the street.
and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
too
yeah.
small right now to put.
Under
any
the
buil-
current code, because
Under
there
the
isn't
current-
high density in Lower
Under
Village.
the current code, not not the proposed code, the current code. So we've been, as we've been talking with him, our thinking is, look, right now you can't build at all. This way you can build.
Mhm.
But the other thing that came about is looking at character.
Mhm.
And looking at character coming up from the river, we cross the bridge, buildings on both sides. Green Street goes off to the right. you carry on up Maine, and yeah, Sky is bringing up that intersection. Right there, yeah. And so the question becomes, that's the area, and that's the lot, but right now, the boundary between the lower village and the middle village is Elm Street.
Mhm.
And so, and what on the other side of the street is,
So this one over here, for sure, I'm proposing. I will say, I want to double check with Leslie before I fully commit to suggesting if it should be all 4 of these. I do think there's a natural boundary to include all of these here. And this would be Middle Village up here. This kind of rise here is a natural demarcation. And then after this one, you hit a ravine and no development for a while. So it would be kind of a little diagonal here. I do want to double check with Leslie in case she has a compelling reason that she thinks these ones maybe shouldn't be, but I don't think so. Part of the reason I'm suggesting this is when I was working with Leslie to try to get some changes through for Brian, who was requesting them. She did say that she had kind of thought maybe this could be part of Lower Village, but she had heard that, you know, zone boundaries weren't wanting to be changed. And as I've thought and percolated on things, I thought, wait, no, but zone boundaries are being changed. So
They are.
maybe we should reconsider this. I will say, I think Brian would probably, you know, vote for this and say yes to this either which way, but
As long as he could get his project underway. No,
but
So it's
maybe
more-
this is an opportunity to follow what we've been doing elsewhere
And be
and
consistent.
be consistent. So I'm saying, like, I don't think Brian's gonna torpedo this if we don't do this. But maybe we should consider it because we're considering other things. That's the point I'm bringing
Can
up.
you go back? I'm not clear where you're proposing the boundary to be.
Go
Yeah.
back to the.
Back to the map, the map.
The original, I thought what you were talking about was when you first come across the bridge, that area has a distinctly different character. Once you get past Green Street, or before you get to Green Street.
No, I was not. I was suggesting these lots here,
Become part of
Lower Village.
Lower Village.
I'm
So
sorry if that
even-
was unclear to
so
you guys. I
even
do
into Elm-
apologize.
into Elm?
No, just the parts of Middle Village. I was not suggesting to take anything off of the urban, but I will also say, this is the least important thing happening here. We've already done a lot for this. If you guys don't feel comfortable, we don't have to, but you did change the boundaries of the upper village to take some lots in, so I think it should be considered.
Well,
That's-
why not change it, move it down, move the Middle Village down to Green Street? Because that's really where the character changes.
I mean, that would make things
Right,
pretty
that-
restrictive.
I was gonna
on
say,
those.
I thought that was one of the things we were discussing when Brian first month was basically saying that this over here
Yeah,
was comparable to Middle Village and extending the Middle Village boundary down to encompass that corner.
I can't say that would go with your density. Middle Village is, I mean, if you're bringing in, yeah, if you're bringing, no, it's fine. If you're bringing in R1, that's a different thing. And if you, I'm not super prepared to discuss that. I don't know how I feel about it because Middle Village is the most restrictive zone here. And I would really want to consider before I would
as long
suggest
as
that
it's
be,
less restricted.
yes.
I think the thing that and it wasn't even we, because the committee was so new and so at the early stages of our learning process in this whole thing, that the reason these 2 zones got delineated where they did is because we were wanting to stay away from the R1 and R2 zones. Because, you know, that's where we're looking, where we're focused is in areas where mixed use, residential and commercial where they have a natural fit. So not to stray into the purely residential areas, right? And so that, I think that still guides us.
Okay.
Right? So Brian's suggestion of,
I would say
Like-
Brian's suggestion is just his lot, you know,
Yeah,
that's all he's
that's
brought
what-
up.
yeah.
I looked at the geographic and
Yeah.
said maybe these other ones would also make sense, but I've been trying to be very cautious about that and saying, I would
Yeah.
want to double check with Leslie.
Yeah.
And also, you know, if you guys want to, if you discuss it and you feel like it still stands, that is fine. I just thought that it was appropriate that you
To look
discuss
at
it
Yeah,
as we discuss, you know, making sure we're doing the same thing or, you know, applying the same standards.
So does that be the advantage of including those other properties in the lower village, like in.
The
redevelop-
thing is that the lower village just has more density options because the general, or not the general building. Well, okay, I don't know actually completely off the top of my head.
Yeah, okay.
Robin, that's a great question. And now I'm like, oh, I can't answer it.
I mean, if those, the people owning those
Yeah.
properties might wanna put more apartments or make it, you know. I mean, we're looking at increased housing, so if we shift the boundary, an advantage could be the potential for more housing.
You know what the difference is traditional storefront. That's not allowed in the middle village, whereas it is allowed in the lower village. So it would allow for more mixed use in that area that's kind of close in. And, you know, is kind of near those shops and areas such as that.
That little bit of public parking down by the river there.
Yes.
yeah,
So we're
On that
talking
side
about,
of the street, the buildings are almost in the road.
Mhm.
That's the thing.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and they can't, they've
no
got
road.
that, the Grand Canyon Topsham
Yes.
behind them.
Right.
So it's,
So you could say, you
like
know,
you could
we
do
don't agree, let's keep that middle village, because I do think the character of the buildings really fits with the character of the middle village.
Yeah.
I really only bring it up because it's geographically right on that four corners of Elm and Maine.
so you're talking those 4 buildings and Brian Blanson. Lot.
I say very cautiously, I'm saying those 4 buildings. I'm really bringing up Brian Banton's lot because that has been requested.
Are you looking to build something? Is
Yes.
this-
Yeah,
Yes.
they would like to build, I think 60
6
6
units.
And right now it's not cost
They can do
effective for them,
5.
they could do 4, I believe, but.
But I think with the village storefront.
I think that they've struggled with the architectural aspects of
Yes.
the village building and the row buildings. And just, you know, they've kind of been shown different options. I think a lot of things have been done. If you don't feel like these areas better matches the lower village, and you know, this is an area where you can make a change, don't do it. You know, we've done a lot for him already and he will be able to do more. But if you want to look at this and say, okay, we can change borders if we think that the character better matches the lower village, that should be considered. That's really all I'm bringing up to you.
I would be, if we were moving it down to include the old bank where the main lines used to be and the church and the other historic buildings.
Mhm. So you're suggesting the middle village go down?
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
down rather than, rather than lower village go up. That I'd be in favor of.
I think we've made the right call.
Yeah, it sounds like let's keep it as
You
is.
know, and I think it's good to look at these things,
Yeah.
but
To be able to.
it's
Yeah.
a tricky thing. And I
It's
think,
not involved. So it
I
has to
think
go-
it'll, I think the density allowances, the buildings options are the best we can do right now.
Yep, and we've made
And I'm
some
only looking
changes.
at the clock because I think there's a meeting in here.
Oh, there might
Is
be,
there?
yeah.
So, folks, I appreciate everybody who have weighed in on our update to the select board. Thank you all for reviewing that and offering comments. What I'll do is incorporate those comments and send my final out to you all, including Lori. We generally give an update to the select board. In the beginning, we did it almost quarterly, but at least every 6 months, and we haven't done it for over a year, so we're due. And I think it will coincide with some things that might be helpful for some members of the planning board as well. To sort of be reminded of like, why are we doing this kind of thing?
If you're going for November, deadline is Wednesday.
Wednesday, right?
Yep. And you can send it to Rose if you feel good with it.
So we tabled a
The
conversation.
last one.
Tabled it for later or.
No, I think we're sticking with,
Stick with where we.
yeah, that's my sense of
Okay.
us, is
Yeah.
like we're sticking with where we are. Because to move it opens up other issues that. I
It's
don't
not a
think we need
huge,
to
it's not a
set it
huge
up right
request
now.
right now. I think we've done our due diligence to try, we've changed some building dimensions to try to help Brian out in that area. And I really just wanted to bring this up because I didn't want it to just be me responding to the feedback, you know, if it was bringing up another concern I was aware of, I wanted us to look back at it, but it sounds like Joe's got his thoughts. You kind of have your thoughts, there's maybe other thoughts. I don't think it's a huge thing. We're trying not to drag this out forever and ever. There isn't consensus.
Going to be in a better position.
Exactly,
leaving it-
yes, exactly, yep, yep, all right, I
So-
think motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Let's, nods around the table, thank you. We're adjourned at 5:58. Let's get out.
Oh, that clock is wrong, it's 6 o'clock, actually.
Probably requires some-
No,